I'm going to go ahead and turn this over to Neil, and he will get started. Neil?
Thank you, John. Good to be with you. Good to be with all of you. Thank you for joining me and this program today. This is going to be a fun adventure, hopefully. I'm going to take you on a journey through the escalator effect. That's leveraging the 4 essential steps of organizational success in COVID-19 and beyond. I'm thrilled to do this with you and kind of for you, and hope you'll join me in an engaging conversation, although I'll do the talking primarily today. I will be setting this up in such a way that you can stop the video if you replay this, and that'll be available after download when we're done, to have conversations with your team at all levels. So I've had the privilege of working with hundreds of organizations, over 500 credit unions in 49 states nationwide. I've facilitated hundreds of strategy sessions, held 5,000 focus groups with 5,000 consumers, 8 at a time, been doing this for many years, and hundreds of thousands of surveys. So today is the collection of the knowledge that I've gleaned with my team in both my consulting work and my doctorate work in studying organizational leadership. We have categorized that and kind of consolidated it in my book, The Escalator Effect, which just came out earlier this year, the 4 essential steps to lead and inspire your organization to rising success. We were blessed to have it be an Amazon international bestseller in 4 business categories and in 4 countries. And obviously, we'd love you to take a look at that as well. Now, today we'll be talking about a number of things. And of course, there's so many industry challenges that resonate and continue to be part of our reality for some time. The challenges of relevance and differentiation in our highly competitive environment only exacerbated by COVID-19. Banks and fintech getting better. The pace, the productivity, maintaining profitability and margin squeeze environments into 2021 and beyond. Talent management with all the competition for talent and the challenging economy that we're in. The need and the challenge to not be everything to everybody when we're so demanded to be, right? We have depositors, we have borrowers, their needs are not, they are distinct, and yet we're trying to be everything to everybody and can't do that anymore, guys. We'll talk about that. Obviously, our needs for growth and market share, and accountability, culture, and one thing I'll talk specifically on is the acceptance of mediocrity and the fact that we simply can't do that anymore. Now, no doubt, some of these things are relevant to you and some are not. There's so much more to deal with in our industry, and what I'm going to share with you are concepts and a model to help provide a framework for success moving forward. They're extremely relevant now, especially given the changing environment we're in, but they're really relevant because they're foundational elements and principles all the time and can be used in COVID-19 and beyond. As we start to think about the journey we're on, whether it's in this program or more importantly at your credit union, be it an initiative, a project, the credit union overall, Simon Sinek has reminded us to start with why, and earlier Stephen Covey said, begin with the end in mind. So I think they're both telling us that at the end of the day, success starts with focus. And my suggestion to you is focus begins with purpose. So throughout our conversation today, I'm going to ask you some questions and I'll put a stop sign up in the right corner. We won't take that much time to talk about or think about them now, but you may want to share this video with your team. So again, thank you for joining me live, but also on video, that you can address the questions such as this one I'll pose now. In a few words or a single sentence, please write your answer to this. What is the essential purpose of your organization, department, or role? Because this applies whether it's credit union based, at the board level, at the leadership level, at the department level, even individually. And then why does this question not only matter, but why is it vital? So to address this question, let me suggest this. Let me put you in a room in your mind with the rest of your organization at all levels, the entire board, the entire leadership team, all the associate staff, everybody involved in the organization's in this room. And around the room, we have banners, posters, if you will, that say on the left, different leadership strategies or leadership positions we could strive to achieve. Now, the question as to which one we should focus on would be presented to your participants, and they would be you would ask them to stand under the banner that represents the one they feel represents where the organization should focus moving forward. Again, departmentally, organizationally, overall. Now, if you're like most organizations, the staff would probably scatter and you'd have some concentrated areas, but you'd have lots of different areas represented. You might have people under bargain leader trying to be the lowest price. You might have people under education leader teaching knowledge and skills, or Maybe the relationship leader committed to their success, both proactive and reactive, or maybe the security leader, which is more reactive. Any one of these, and this is not an exhaustive list, you likely could come up with more. The point here is that you'd have people scattered around the room, and some people would be alone and some would have lots of concentration. That's an issue for alignment we'll talk about shortly. But most importantly right now is how aligned would you be? How focused would you be? The power of this is in that this core purpose drives your following strategies, actions, and tactics. If you're the bargain leader, then you're going to try to reduce price wherever you can, have limited. That's going to drive those strategies, as opposed to the, let's say you're the convenience leader, which is going to demand branches. Branches still matter. I can show that in a moment or later today. Whatever your strategy is, whatever your purpose is, will drive your strategy. So it's really critical that we be aligned and have this conversation in our departments, in our organizations at the start. Again, a stop sign to encourage you to stop the video if you're doing this after the fact and have this conversation with your team. Which do we want to own? And the only wrong answer is all of them. The right answer is up to 3, ideally 2, and even in most case 1. So this is our lead in to the escalator model. This is our framework for our conversation today. The 4 essential steps to organizational success. And it is an escalator and not stairs, because the idea is that there's 4 steps and they're in motion. It can be a virtual cycle going up where the 4 steps are repeated and then repeat again to increase your success moving forward. Or it could be a vicious cycle going down. And I'll illustrate that momentarily. The first step is focus. So finish this sentence for me, if you would, in your mind. If you try to be everything to everybody, you end up being nothing to anyone, right? This is a challenge for us as we try to do so many things and have so many ambitious goals. We really need to hone that. And the next step is employee engagement. You see, if the employees are not engaged, right, that's going to limit the third step, the member experience. Let's talk about these 3 for a moment. If you have an organization without shared vision, without clarity of focus, then you're going to have silos. Again, I'll demonstrate this in a sec. Because each employee is not going to come to work and each department leader is not going to come and do their jobs without some determined focus. If we haven't clarified that as an organization overall, then they'll determine it themselves, because we won't work in a vacuum. We will determine our focus. And if each department is determining its focus, you will have silos. And this is true to some extent virtually in every organization. So it's important that focus overall drive the employee engagement and the departments and the team overall. And it may not be a direct line from employee engagement to member experience. It might not be a direct line from happy employees to happy members, but I defy you to get happy members without happy and engaged employees. Finally, the 4th step in the model is relevant distinction. And for years, I've heard lots of CEOs and credit unions talk about relevance. We have to remain relevant. And I think this is a great question and one we should continue to pursue. But I would offer that it's only half the question. The other half is distinction. For example, likely every one of you have checking, savings, bill pay, mobile banking, mobile deposit. Those are all very relevant products for your membership, but they're not very distinct. There's nothing uniquely valuable about them that says, work with me, do business with me. You also have individual logos, names, addresses, both virtual and physical. That's all distinct, but they aren't driving a unique, real, relevant reason to do business with you in and of itself. It's the combination of relevance and distinction that's powerful. And here's where another part of the model takes flight. It's virtually impossible without focus to build relevant distinction. For example, community-based credit unions often are challenged with, well, how do I build relevant distinction trying to serve the world? My answer would be, you can't. You got to stand for something. And an ironic reality of targeting is, the more you stand for something, the more you uniquely have exceptionalism somewhere, the broader your appeal, because you're a magnet beyond that which you're just focusing on. But if you're mediocre across the board, you're not really appealing anywhere. So to illustrate this, take a teacher's credit union. And by the way, in community charter credit unions, they could focus on a particular niche within their target, within that community, which I suggest. But for purposes of illustration, take a teacher's credit union whose focus is on serving educators who may work, say, 10 months a year. To build relevant distinction for them is relatively easy. We need to find either skip a pay options where they don't have to pay loans in those 2 months they're not being paid, or maybe we have a level pay program Well, those 10 months are turned into 12 months of level pay. So when you have focus, building relevant distinction may not be easy, but it's certainly doable. Without focus, you may not. So if you're struggling with, do we have a relevance and distinction problem, you may very well have a focus problem. So 3 questions to think about. Why does each of these factors have value? Why are in the order they're in? And what is their relationship to each other? Now we've developed a survey at GCS we've done with scores of credit unions across the country, and I'll share with you some high-level results in a bit. But it's based on the 4 factors, 10 categories for each factor, and then 2 questions per category. So there's 80 questions overall. We do this for credit unions. Obviously, be interested in doing it for you if interested. It gives us a read on how we're doing as an industry and, of course, each individual credit union on their performance. So let's look at each one in turn and start with focus. A question for all of us is, what are the most important issues at your credit union or your role or department at this time moving forward? Because the starting place for success, what does success look like, starts with the most vital questions, the issues we must address, such that if we address them, we're successful. Because they in turn determine our future strategies and tactics and actions. We suggest you at least consider 4 key considerations for focus. Number 1 is the one we've been talking about. Why are we here? What's our why? What's our reason for being, our purpose? And our vision, where are we going? The 2 flip sides of the coin. Number 2, for whom are we building the business? Who do we serve? Because again, serving that niche enables us to develop needs that we will really serve them well with, because we can't be everything to everybody. Doug Rao, the former CEO of Trader Joe's who built that business, made this comment in a conversation we had years ago. He said, E squared equals 0. If we try to be everything to everyone, we'll end up being nothing to anybody. E squared equals 0. We can't live to that formula anymore. We have to commit to whom we're building it and then do that with exceptionalism. And then finally, in terms of doing it, it's the execution part. Are we focusing on execution to turn ideas into action and to build accountability around that performance? We identify the core purpose. This is what focus is all about. The niche, the need, and are we executing to that area? And that's the key elements of focus. Now, years ago, in raising my kids with my former wife, we're still friends, we used to have an argument about what do we want for our children? And she would say, I want our kids to follow their passion. And I thought that was a great point. I want our kids to follow their passion in their careers and their lives. But it just felt like there was something missing. The great irony is, and this comes from good to great, well, I'll share with you next, the hedgehog model. I've renamed it the 3 Ps because I find that more accessible. And I found it one of the best parenting books I ever read. It happens to be pretty relevant for business too. In that, the comment from the book was that, you know what, passion is great. It's essential. It absolutely has to be in place. But you have to have more than that. You have to not only answer the question, what are we deeply passionate about, but where can we perform exceptionally well? And where can we make some money? Because although we're obviously not in business to make money, without making money, we're not in business. So we have to be profitable. And the intersection of this Venn diagram, that center sweet spot point, really is obviously great for my kids, but more, and yours too, but more importantly and more relevantly here today, maybe not as important, but more relevantly here today, is that's the sweet spot opportunity of where is our focus? And are we engaging input from all team members along? Do we understand what they care about, what's driving their intrinsic motivators, so we can be on a quest, a calling, a cause, a commitment to make a difference in the world in the sweet spot we've identified? So I have 3 sets of questions for you. We're obviously not going to go into them at great depth now due to time, but we would ask, what energizes us? Ask your team these questions. Where can we perform the best? Where can we build on our strengths to be exceptional? Where does our skill set favorably align with our mission, vision, and strategy? And where can we make a difference for our stakeholders? And finally, profitability, that third circle in the diagram. What's driving profitability for us? What gives us the greatest return, payback, and the X factor if you could pick only one and only one X ratio, impact per X, to systematically increase over time, what X is that? And maybe it's more 1, 2, or 3 X's. Walgreens did this a number of years ago outside our industry, and they had to decide what's the single most important impact that we could have on profitability. Is it selling the most expensive items? Is it driving drug prescription business? Is it online sales? And they came away with it's visits per store. They found if we can drive consumers to come to our stores, that's where we get the most profitability. So what is it for your organization? Is it services per household, services per member? Is it member growth? Is it productivity or a penetration of checking and percentage of members with primary checking? What is it that drives your profitability? It could be one of those or others. The key here is to understand the power of purpose. And let me demonstrate this quest idea I just alluded to. Harvard Business Review Analytics reports this. Those companies able to harness the power of purpose to drive performance and profitability enjoy a distinct competitive advantage. This was a reprise. They did this study again, what was done by Jim Collins and Jerry Porras in 1994, studying companies up to 1990. They repeated it just a few years ago, and they found exactly the same results. Visionary companies, those guided by a purpose beyond making money, return 6 times more money than those just trying to make money. So I encourage you to think about the power of purpose, the power of alignment, the power of being on this quest to make a difference for your members, to make a difference with your team, to make a difference with alignment, to drive profitability through a higher cause or calling that's driven by your purpose. Finally, one more exercise here. We call this the top 5. And this is a fun thing to do with your team. Sometimes it's eye-opening, sometimes it's not so fun, but the results can be fun. And then we ask, what are those top 5 things? What are those priorities such that if we do them, we're successful at the end of the year? Ideally, you do this earlier in the year than now, or maybe for next year. And you write your top 5, whether you're at the board level or the senior team level, department level, or even just staff. And I shouldn't say just, because you're vital at every role. Then turn to your direct report, your boss, team members, associates, and say, what do you think our top 5 are? Ideally, this is done at a team level, and compare them. And what you'll find is they rarely, if ever, fully align. And we suggest when I'm talking to staff and associates, you really might want to make sure you're aligned with your boss and your team, because that's probably career success in the balance. But the power here is the power of alignment, which takes us to our next step. The first step, again, is focus. Let's go to the second step, employee engagement. Really getting our associates engaged in the organization, ideally to fulfill this purpose, this quest, this calling we've developed to make a difference in our world in a higher calling than just ourselves. And I use something I like to call the flashlight metaphor. And the flashlight metaphor is this. Let's say we have that same room where we put all the staff earlier, you and the team, under the banners. This time we're not going to physically walk over them, but we walk over to them or under them. But we'll take a flashlight and aim it at them. But it's not just any flashlight. It's not a flashlight powered by a battery. It's a flashlight powered by our engagement and our contribution. The more engaged we are, the brighter our beam. The more contribution we make, the brighter our beam. Now, lots of you probably have position power in your organization. You're here listening, trying to grow, trying to learn new things, so you're probably highly engaged. My guess is you all have very bright beams. You probably, however, if you think about your organization, can think about people who may not have any position power or title or rank, but have really bright beams. They're big contributors and they're very engaged. You can probably also think of some that don't have very bright beams. The idea, of course, is to get our beams not only as bright as possible individually, but collectively and aiming in the right direction. So I mentioned this earlier. Let's say we have all those banners around the room. And I mentioned silo leadership. And this is what happens by and large in candidly most organizations to some extent. We have people aiming their flashlight at different flyers or different banners around the room. And the key here is it doesn't matter if the top row, which is just a sampling and should be representative of all departments, or the bottom row, which is obviously representative of a few layers, but think of all the layers in your organization. If we're not all aligned, then we're all, to borrow a metaphor, rowing against each other. And think of the individual who may be pointing at a particular banner and notices that he or she is alone in that pointing. There's no one else pointing in that direction. What do you think would happen to their beam? it would probably get dimmer, right? It just would kind of like, this isn't very motivating. Does that happen in real life? You bet. But what if we could get them on board with 1, 2, or at most 3 from 4 disciplines of execution I'm referencing? Not the model, that's mine, but the prioritization key of no more than 3 primary drivers. Is if they could get on board the power of alignment. So this obviously doesn't work. And candidly, I've seen in too many organizations where the CEO has goals, the board has directives, there's a stakeholder or compensation program that pays people out based on their objectives, and maybe there's incentive programs for the sales team to sell various products and none of these are perfectly or even well sometimes aligned. Obviously, that's not working for us, and this is what you end up getting. So obviously we want to have this, right? We want to have shared vision and aligned leadership where it doesn't matter we're all pointing up and to the right. The point is we're all pointing together. We're all aligned. Our compensation packages and programs and goals and vision are all aligned with our metrics and reward systems. This gets not only the organization working well together, but each individual working well together and aligned in their focus. So there's power in shared vision. And the shared vision message I really want to communicate is this. If we were to ask team members how they felt about the importance of, if they were on a sports team, being the most valuable player on a team at any level or being on the championship team, what do you think they'd prefer? Virtually all folks would probably say, I'd rather be on the winning team than stand alone as a champion, at just an MVP, because I want to be a champion together. Because there's nothing more powerful than winning together. The African proverb says, if you want to go fast, go alone. But if you want to go far, go together. Work together, align our flashlights, get that powerful beam as a laser burning a hole through the wall, and get everybody's individual beams motivated to be part of the team. We'll talk more about how to do that as we move forward. But one of the things we cannot do that really is a death knell of too many organizations, and credit unions have some challenges here because we're so nice. We're such nice people. I believe you can still be nice, but not accept mediocrity. Because the problem with mediocrity, of course, is it sets complacency as a norm. But it does something even worse than that. It demotivates your stars, your high performers, and it creates an acceptance of complacency, of stagnation. And if you're stagnant, quite candidly, in our fast-moving society and incredible competition evolving all the time, that means we're falling behind. Obviously, we don't want that to happen. We encourage you to escalate your organization, not the book reference, but move from good to great or excellent to exceptional, set the bar higher, be on the quest to make that difference, and don't accept mediocrity in the process. Sometimes this takes a mindset shift and an understanding of we need to evolve from management to leadership. If we asked most folks, which would you rather be, a manager or a leader, almost every hand would go up for leadership. And there's a good reason for that. At the same time, I don't want to minimize management. It has a vital role. One of the key words in management, if we were to look up management of people, management of time, management of projects, in every one of those definitions, the single word control would be present. We would see that come up. Now, this is really vital. I used to, years ago, my first car was an ancient Ford station wagon, that part of the idea of control is measurement, metrics, and understanding what's going on. Now, that car did not have an odometer, and it did not have a gas gauge that worked. So I had no idea. I was not in control. I had no tools to manage how much gas I had, because I don't know how much gas it burned. I don't know how much gas was left. So I filled that thing every other day. Obviously, we need controls and management. But really what we're trying to do with our team and with people, which is really what the escalator model is all about, working with people, is to inspire them. Because there's been an evolution of management towards leadership. Years ago, before any of us were born, the time and motion studies and the factory work of subordination was the boss telling the subordinate what to do. Well, obviously that's not very motivating. Fast forward 20, 40 years and you get to empowerment. Empowerment suggests some great things. But there's really something more important than empowerment that we should strive for, and it's vital in employee engagement, and it is authorship. Authorship is giving people a stake and a say in the creation of the rules of the game. Empowerment is simply playing by the rules of the game. It's certainly better than subordination, But why, if you think there are most people in most organizations, the highest level of engagement and commitment typically is at the top? Because quite candidly, you could reduce it to they have the most authorship. They have the biggest say in the creation of the game. So how can we push down authorship? And I'm not talking about creating committees to create committees and not actually listen to staff input. That's worse than doing it if you didn't do it. But really giving authorship where it can be. And I know that's hard in our highly regulated world, but the more authorship we can grant, the more engagement we can get. It's the difference between compliance and commitment, because you're committed to that which you have a say in creating, rather than just playing the rules of what someone else created. Part of that means people skills of slow is fast and fast is slow. So when it comes to people, we suggest please slow down, at least in the beginning. What does it mean slow is fast and fast is slow? Slow is fast means take the time, especially with new hires, to build the relationship, build the trust, get to understand their strengths, their individual ways to contribute, so that when needs arise, we can know who to turn to, and we have go-to people beyond just our favorites. Because if we take that time and build that relationship, if we need to move on a dime and we've built the trust on slow is fast on the front end, they will turn on a dime with us. But if we just go fast at the front end and then need them to turn on a dime because we've had a crisis or something we need to move with, the issues of trust, purpose, why are we doing this, why should we follow you, will emerge. With people, slow is fast and fast is slow. Take the time to build the relationships. It actually saves you time in the long run. That's a lot more rewarding. There's some things in our business, however, that are kind of thwarting our productivity and our ability to live to one of those purpose elements of execution. And I call these the top 10 cultural challenges. At GCS, we do survey work, as I've alluded to. We also do a culture assessment that's very interesting, in which we go in and use an archaeological metaphor and try to understand what are the artifacts that we can see in the organization to deduce the correct ways to act, think, and feel in your organization. What are the rules of the game here, in working here? How do things work here at your organization? So the left side of this chart, and I'll just put them all up, is the negative cultural drivers. The right side is the positive cultural drivers. Now, it's highly unlikely that all 10 are problematic at your organization. However, it is not unlikely that one or more exist. Ideally, we want to move from left to right. So the first one, it's better to be nice than authentic, is an endemic issue at credit unions. We believe in family, we love each other, and I love that. There's nothing wrong with that. We can still be nice, but we have to allow for constructive criticism and feedback, to have real debates. Of course, we want people on the bus. But you know what? We get people better on the bus if they've had a say in creating that bus route, that authorship, than merely saying, here's the bus, get on. We're a little risk averse in our organization as an industry, as a movement. Of course, we want calculated measure risk. We don't want to be irresponsible, but calculated measure risk is necessary. We kind of tend too far to the left. Slow is best. Slow is methodical is the rule. No, prudent speed. Gary Vaynerchuk, the VC capitalist, venture capitalist investor, says speed is the differentiator today. And certainly I'll share with you, there's some speed factors that contribute to that idea. So you can see many of the rest of these. Mediocrity is acceptable. It's not. We expect high performance. Planning and vision are not essential that we actually act on them. Now, none of you would subscribe to these probably individually, but if you look at how things actually work at your organization, many of them may be true. The challenge is to understand them, build awareness of them, and then address them. Finally, the bottom one, relationships determine power. There's an in crowd and an out crowd. But reality, of course, if we'd rather have a meritocracy, more distributed responsibilities, and work together with alignment toward this quest I'm referencing. Which of these are relevant in your organization? Now let's talk about that last one just a little bit more. One of my mentors, a gentleman consultant by the name of Vance Caesar, a Fortune 100 consultant, talks about the power of word of mouth with individuals. Of course, that's incredibly important in financial services and our world, number one way we get business. He makes this observation. Success in life is based on three things: who you know, who knows you, and what people say about you when you're not in the room. Who you know, who knows you, and what people say about you when you're not in the room. This is an epiphany, a relevant, really wow for me. As I think about my own life, I did my own career evolve because people thought well of me and made references. Probably true for many of you. certainly an impact on virtually all of us. So remember that, if you would, this definition of success. We're going to come back to it in just a sec. Now, I'd like you to think about this question. What employee issues do you likely have at your organization that may in fact get in the way of employee engagement? Now, I'll share with you the top 3 that we see in employee surveys nationally, and we see these virtually everywhere we go. You probably have a communications challenge. Even if you've made progress, this one seems to always be among the list of problems or challenges at organizations. And you may have an organizational communications challenge, and you probably also may have an informal communications. Organizational is where we're going, how we're doing, how we're progressing, and feedback to that point. How are we doing as an organization? I don't know. If you haven't developed your purpose, your objectives, your strategies, and aren't reporting it, of course, you're going to have that problem. Informal communication is, do I feel safe to challenge our existing practices? Can I have comments without reprisal? Again, we need to get folks on the bus, but if we give them the chance to have that conversation on the front end, they can get on the bus once they've had a chance to vent their views, and we can learn in the process. That's, by the way, what the Escalator model survey is all about, not only an employee survey, but to collectively get the wisdom of the team to get many minds thinking just beyond the CEO, the board, and or the senior team. To address these issues, we suggest you answer their questions. What's our purpose? What's my role? And instead of just telling me what and I need you to do something by when, give me the reason, tell me the why. That's always the missing ingredient in communication. And finally, make it safe for them to have questions. Number 2, recognition. Dr. William James, the father of psychology at Harvard University, made this comment, said, the greatest observation of my life is the following. The deepest craving of human nature is the need to be appreciated. To what extent are we appreciating our team? And I'm not meaning a trophy for showing up. That's not sincere, meaningful, authentic communication, but recognizing them, giving them authorship is saying you have value, listening to them, sharing their value. The third issue you probably have at your organization is some level of favoritism, where people feel there's favorites, there's an in crowd or an out crowd, and I'm not among them. So we say to the leaders a couple things. Learn, lead, and leverage to associate strengths. That start slow, slow is fast, and fast is slow. Learn their strengths so we can distribute the go-tos to the people that can accomplish them. Don't deal just with familiarity, not the people I know, but learn and get to know everybody to the extent you can. I know this is hard in COVID-19 with Zoom meetings and such, but we have to do the best we can. The second is to beware reverse favoritism. What's that? This was introduced to me by a number of our clients who, when talking with their staffs, which I do annually, on how's it going, they said, there's a bit of resentment building because we're the really good, strong go-to people, but we don't feel like favorites. We feel dumped on because we have more work than anybody else. So the favorites actually, in some cases, can feel like less than favorite because they have more to do. But favoritism is an issue that I suggest you do your can to address. But I want to go back to that statement a minute ago. Success in life is based on 3 things: who you know, who knows you, and what people say about you when you're not in the room. Well, if you think about that, to me, that's kind of a definition of favoritism. So I've yet to meet a CEO, and that might be appropriate now because of COVID-19 and talent acquisition and retention issues, who has not told me it is okay to say the following to their teams if I were to speak at a all-staff meeting. And that is this. If you think there's issues of favoritism and you cannot be a favorite, but success is based on who you know, who knows you, and what people say about you, then it's probably time to find a new job. Because we want people who feel engaged here and feel they can be favorites, if you will, that everybody can be a favorite. And if you can't feel there's opportunity for you, you probably won't be as engaged as we want. That's not in the credit union's interest. That's not in the employee's interest. So we suggest you find a better place. So let's move on to the third factor, and that is the member experience. Now, the member experience, of course, is vital. It's vital for a number of reasons. Number 1, credit union members are responsible for virtually every job at the credit union. I know that's self-evident, but do we talk about that? Do we share that with our team? Folks, every staff, associates, leadership, board, if the members don't buy from us, they don't apply for a loan, they don't join, they don't use our services, they don't make transactions, we literally have nothing to do. They are absolutely essential. They are vital. Without them, none of us have a job. They should be our primary decision filter. When we're thinking about focus, there's a phrase in another program we do called on purpose. We do things on purpose. On purpose should be using your members as a decision filter based in part on meeting their needs based on your focus and purpose. And remember, of course, that they're the ultimate arbiters of our success. Jeff Bezos, the CEO of Amazon, is famous for this idea: we keep an empty chair for the customer in every meeting. So we're reminded to look through the lens of the customer's view as we do our work. Well, of course, in credit unions, that's our members. And you can do this not only in literal meetings, but virtual meetings where you set one of the Zoom boxes to be a picture of the member or a chair or the word member, so that you're always remembering that this is why we exist. Now, my doctorate work looked at NPS scores and what is the drivers of loyalty. And we identified 8 great loyalty drivers, that's what we call them, which literally every comment about why somebody says they are a promoter for you, a 9 and 10, or a detractor, or 0 to 6, can fall into one of these 8 buckets. We actually have 9 for credit unions and banking because we divide price into rates and fees. The key drivers for most credit unions are assurance and empathy, but that doesn't mean they're right. Convenience is typically the detractor driver, but literally 99+% of all comments as to why people say they use or don't use the credit union, or rather they're loyal or not loyal to the credit union. I put the stop sign up to have you have a conversation of which do you want to own? Which do you want to build your business around? Remember, we can't be everything to everybody. If we own 1, 2, or at most 3 of these and can build our brand and our member experience around them, we know these work. They're all loyalty drivers. Which ones make sense for you? And as you're thinking about building to them, we encourage you to consider the member experience cycle. Use the 8 great drivers along the 6 steps in the member journey. In any product, there's an awareness research side. Then they have to purchase it. Maybe there's supplemental things you want to sell them: delivery, usage, and disposal. So for example, let's say you had an auto loan and you want to sell auto loans. So how, and let's say convenience is your focus. That's the one we're trying to build on. So how convenient is the process of learning about and then applying to your car loans and then actually getting the car loan? And maybe you have MBI or mechanical breakdown insurance rather, or GAP, where you want to sell that. Is that a convenient, easy process? Is it friction free? Actually getting the loan? Can we get it to them in easy fashion? How about using it, making payments, finding the information about it, and then finally either replacing it or paying it off? Go through all of your products and services that are most important, not every one. Again, focus is the essential starting of any point. And are they opportunities for leveraging and marketing and communication, or are they pain points that we need to address? Because we want to make that journey most effective for our membership when we're doing well, or to do well by meeting their needs. There's also another thing to remember here, and that is the member thinks about things differently than we do. I like to think of it as having our antennas up. We have our antennas up in banking to what's being done by other credit unions, other financial service providers, fintech banks, etc. But a reality check is that the member thinks of banking as a maintenance activity, the same way they think of the gas company, the cell phone provider, the garbage collector, auto repair, etc. What that means is this is the kind of thing that they only think about, or we tend to think about, when there's a problem. You see, it's a maintenance activity is that you don't want to have to think about it. A focus group participant years ago said, I hate Bank of America because they're the bank I have to think about 24/7. I never know when they're going to surprise me with a hidden fee. Consumers love to have status quo with maintenance providers. As long as it's working fine and not too terribly, I'm okay. We tend to think of it as an errand to have to do our hassle if we ever deal with them. See, we have to know that although we're playing the PFI relationship game to win, consumers are playing not to lose. That's a big difference. They're not trying to maximize. They're merely trying not to lose by sufficing. I'll explain that in a sec. Fintech, of course, has entered this world, and they're playing a different game altogether: cherry picker. See, there's a difference between maintenance and enhancement. The business we're in is on the maintenance side. Investment services and financial services really on the enhancement side. You wouldn't say, I haven't had any problems with my investments, so I'm satisfied. Whereas you would say that with banking. It's satisficing, which is a combination of suffice, satisfactory, and sufficient. So it's satisficing. And the criteria is no problems. versus maximizing is the expectation of enhancement. How do I get more, add value? So despite the negativity in NPS scores, we'll see NPS scores of 3s and 4s, but people don't leave because it's too big a hassle and they have a high pain threshold because it's in the category of maintenance rather than enhancement. How do we know this? Number one answer on focus groups, or rather on NPS scores, and you probably see this with your own data, is no problems. You wouldn't say that about a restaurant, which is an enhancement activity. I go there because the food didn't make me sick. I had no problems, so it was a 10. Or to see a show, either in a movie or on Netflix, it didn't stop playing. The sound was synchronized with the voice, so it was a 10. No problems. No, you have higher expectations of enhancements. However, we can gain members by knowing that just doing more in maintenance isn't going to get us more business. Getting enhancements, however, into the equation will. So to build the member experience, I use an example of a maintenance provider, the dry cleaner. And think about the dry cleaner, just like banking, it's typically a routine errand, and we think about it when there's a problem, right? When a button is missing, a stain wasn't gotten out, when the clothes aren't ready or they're lost. But what does the dry cleaner know about us? Just like what do we know about our members that we could use to really add value and enhance? They know our size, our brands, our colors, our style, and so much more. If they were to track this, what if they offered discounts, a buying service, online discounts of favorite brands they could make us available, be a partner, an advocate for us, offered free alterations, pick up, drop off. Maybe some of us might like analysis of how we're using or wearing our clothes. We don't have to do anything, they provide it. See, that's enhancement, and almost everything on the right side is something outside the norm of traditional dry cleaning business. That's a metaphor for us at credit unions. So part of this involves how to move from maintenance to enhancement. And a couple ways to do that is proactive altruism, being an advocate. Predictive analytics is part of this, but we have to act on it and be seen as acting in ways that are altruistic from the member's perspective. You see, consumers today are overwhelmed. There's too many choices. If we can have somebody advocate for us, sift through those choices, help us make the best decisions they can, then we're in much better position, because that's how we build relationships and loyalty. And in a way, I suppose, slow is fast and fast is slow is true for our members as well as our staff. Glenn Urban out of MIT wrote, "Don't just relate, advocate. It's not enough to be good responsively. We need proactivity in the equation as well." In what ways could you be proactively advocating for your members to be the difference maker and move from maintenance to enhancement? A couple examples: we could reach out to members with a superior refinance. Right now, obviously, if they have a 8% loan but would qualify for 3 or 4% of the mortgage, we should, of course, reach out. One of my pet peeves, candidly, in credit union land is that we're always talking about financial education, helping people become more financially literate and more better with their finances. To me, the number one way you do that is help people get a better job. But I don't know a credit union out there, and if you do, please let me know and I'll shine a light on you, that helps people find a job or get a better job than they have today. Or more realistically and practically, and not really even very heavily data driven, those members that are paying surcharges or using inconvenient branches, how about sharing them technology or more convenient free options closer by? So I'm asking you to look through a different lens, the lens of the member. And note that Frost & Sullivan, the consultants, have added 89% of customers switch their loyalty because of poor customer service. 86% are willing to spend more with a superior customer service experience. Over 50% of companies, according to Gartner, will redirect investments toward customer experience innovations. We really are in the experience economy. And we see this with younger Zs and Ys. The price becomes less important and experience more. So we suggest the way to get beyond price is the specs of enhancement. This is our realization from all that work I mentioned earlier, of all the research we've done over the years, that you can enhance your member experience, move from maintenance to enhancement by following the specs. Specs are, of course, an old world term for glasses, so we want you to use this lens to look through when designing your member experience. They're also the specifications of any product or service. And perhaps most accessibly, they're an acronym: speed, personalization, ease, control, and security. Speed, personalization, ease, control, security, the specs of a better member experience. We've learned that speed is immediacy, access, convenience. In what ways are we living to this? Instant issue debit cards, a simple example, not acceptable to spend a week without having a payment system if your card is lost or stolen. Personalization, personal touch, that's human personalization and individualization and customization specifically to that member. Ease, of course, has been around a while, but it's still relevant in the model. Make it simple, easy, friction-free. Control, give people control, the freedom to choose. This has really been embraced by insurance companies of late with their drive wise and other terms where you can, if you drive slower and you track it or you drive less, you'll only pay for insurance or you'll get a discount on your insurance. It puts the consumer in control. Of course, it benefits and reduces the risk of the insurer, but it gives the consumer control, which is really important today and an increasing requirement. And finally, security, which is a really all-inclusive term for making people safe and secure, both physically, online, digitally, and private. I know it sounds like an envelope, a large umbrella, but we're putting those all under them. All of these are opportunities to build better experiences, more engaged enhancements for your members. So from the consumer's perspective, you can add enhancements beyond the core business. You can have proactive altruisms to build relationships and trust. For those members who are out of maintenance, I didn't talk a lot about this, but this is where members have the greatest relationships you typically have are members for whom you solve problems, because it's a maintenance activity. If they're out of maintenance, they have a problem. An enhancement is to get them back to maintenance. And then finally, to adhere to the specs, the specifications of the speed, personalization, ease, control, and security. And what I'm asking you to do, as Stephen Covey suggested, is look through this lens because it will itself shape how we see the world. Also, the member experience, of course, comes from, and we encourage you to do research on your member experience to hear and get the voice of the member embedded in that room of your conversation and your decisioning. So here's some very brief information on research we've recently conducted for Newground on COVID-19 impact. And you can see here that a significant number, 37%, I believe, of members have had a downturn in their finances. That puts them out of maintenance. How are we helping them? You can see before and after all these issues, the change on the right here, significant double-digit change in space, contactless interaction, making me feel safer, cleanliness, personal safety, etc. This really wasn't on our mind. I like to joke about this. If I ask people before they have children, what's their top 10 priorities, and then ask them after, sleep is on the latter list, but never on the first. Maybe social interaction, personal safety wasn't on our list before, but it certainly is now. We also asked folks, as you can see from this chart, this is before, during, and after, how comfortable are you, vary somewhat or not, with technology? I would have expected to see a lot of movement before and after to move more comfort with technology. So like all the research that we took away from this and other studies, is that the movement from before COVID-19 to branches and technology as transactional tools and branches becoming more advisory and consultative based is continuing, and COVID-19 has only accelerated that. But branches are not irrelevant. They're not falling off the cliff. In fact, applying for loans and opening accounts, members still prefer that among all other methods overall. So the final step in the model is relevant distinction. So we talked a little bit about this earlier. It's important to be relevant and distinct, but maybe we can delve a little further and realize that relevant distinction is a two-word definition of brand. So the model is very much embedded into your conversations of brand, and brand, of course, should be built on executing on your focus. So there's four aspects of brand. I'm referring to Y&R's model. Now they've been renamed, but the model is the brand asset valuation model, and two components of it. They say there's four components you can see on the screen, but the two I want to emphasize are relevance, meaningfulness, and differentiation, distinctiveness of your brand. So when we think about relevant distinction, we're bringing brand into the model and using this definition. It's your credit union's perceived relevance and distinction in the minds and hearts of consumers. It's important to know we don't own our brand. We can only communicate to and deliver to our brand. The brand resides in our members' and potential members' minds. However, if it's built on standing for something, a clear quest, calling, and drive for a designated future purpose, that brand will be much accelerated and accentuated. Now, it's been pointed out in Blue Ocean Strategy, to borrow from that tool, that if we can't map our relevant distinction, it's arguable we don't have a relevant distinction. So I like the strategy canvas idea, and I suggest this to you, that if you map 5 is highly competitive, 0 is not at all competitive, and you map across the bottom the factors of competition. Here's some. They may or may not be relevant to you, or more importantly, relevant to the target audience you're trying to meet. What are their factors of competition, and how do you map? We suggest you have this conversation. You can do research on it, but at the very least, have this conversation. And you can see in this case, the green is ABC, or your credit union. Blue is banks and, or rather, another credit union. And yellow is banks. Of course, the colors could be whatever you want them to be. And this has been sorted such that the highest performing area, I know it's hard to see the green, is advocacy, loyalty, employee engagement, trustworthiness for this credit union. This tells us their competitive differentiation, the places to market, the places to build on your focus, and continue moving forward. So we encourage you, do a strategy canvas for your organization and have this conversation internally. Now, one other area of relevant distinction I want to talk about is value, because relevant distinction is a 2-word definition of brand. It also talks about value, because at the end of the day, if we don't offer meaningful value, then we're not going to be in business very long. But what is value? Well, this is an interesting thought to think about. What defines value? I'd like you to think about a team you've ever been on. And if you've ever been on a team, think about the players on that team. Some had value, some did not have value. What defined the most valuable players on your team? Well, we could talk at length about this, but at the end of the day, the most valuable players are the ones who made the biggest contribution. That doesn't mean they spoke the most. That means they contributed the most to whatever our desired outcome was. So I suggest companies like Blockbuster or Linens and Things might have used to make contributions to us. It's true for individuals, it's true for companies, but no longer contribute to our lives, and they're no longer in business. So your purpose may evolve, but your contributions to live to that purpose also must evolve. In fact, they can't just be contributions, because we're talking about accountability here as our big picture, one of our big pictures. They have to be commitments. You can't just have words on a wall, on the banners on the ceiling. You have to live to them. So I suggest you make commitments and ask this question of your team. What commitments must we make such that if we achieve them, we're successful? We have 4 questions here to think about as an organization or a department to help you identify what is your contribution that you can make. And I'll tie this all in the strategy model shortly. So finally, I'd like to talk about industry averages for a moment. Excuse me. We've done this survey with scores of credit unions that I've mentioned, the Escalator Factors survey, and we've identified in those list of 4 factors, 10 indexes, 2 questions per index, so 80 questions overall. How are we doing as a movement? Well, collectively, our averages are looking at the top 6 of all 80 questions. And notice only one of the factors is represented in the top 6, and that's the member experience. In fact, there's only 2 questions per category. So both empathy factors, questions in the category, in member experience, says one of the hallmarks of us as an industry is the human side, caring, individualized attention, and the personal service. We do member service well. That's a differentiator. Our brand should all largely probably be built on the human experience. But what about what's not working so well? Here we have representation from all the other 3 factors, excluding the member experience, in the bottom 6, from 75 to 80 in rank. Accountability. We've not only talked about it, we identify that as a problem as an industry. Organizational communication, informal communication, as I mentioned earlier. Our recognition of our reward structure. Technology, obviously important, and finally, professional development. Which of these are most relevant to you at your organization? So there's one last major element and then a final model I'll share with you, and that's this whole big picture of accountability. It's the one tool you must use for accountability is measurement. Why do I make that argument? If you'd fill this blank in, you can't blank what you don't blank. And at this point, I would suggest if we were in person that there's no wrong answers. But the answer I'm really talking about is you can't manage what you don't measure. I couldn't drive my car without measurements. I couldn't know how much gas I had. because I didn't have the measurements in place. We do need management practices. Secondly, that which is measured blank tends to improve. Well, there's implicit truth in this, but that which is measured and communicated. We have to not only do the measurements, but communicate with the team how we're doing so they stay engaged, stay involved. You ever been in an event where there was no measurement, you couldn't see the score? It's easy to lose interest. This turns into the importance of developing a scorecard. So the two ways I suggest you use measurement to help assess our accountability organizationally is a scorecard. To assess our measurement, to assess our accountability individually is to put it into your performance management system and put measurement into how your organizational team is succeeding in their individual goals. We have to have measurement and they have to be aligned. What's our purpose? What contributions are we here to deliver? And what strategies, goals, and measurements will we have to make it happen? So in this regard, we suggest you build a scorecard. And here's an example of we're here to serve our members. And this is a partial scorecard. Our contributions are, in this case, a great member experience and maybe financial strength. And there's probably a few others. We measure them with a traffic light metaphor. We're doing well. We're not doing well. We're doing okay, but probably need to take a second look. And we measure overall how we're doing as an organization, and status for our target is what particular niche we're trying to achieve and trying to reach. I'm not married to this particular model. I'm not suggesting you have to use this. I'm simply suggesting all of these concepts we're talking about, if we put measurement to them, we get accountability around them and we drive success. So in the preliminary materials for this conference, I promised you 5 pillars of strategic planning, and here they are. And I'd like you to think about your own strategic plan. Do they incorporate these very simple but essential foundational elements? Do they include your purpose? What's your reason for being? Hopefully your calling or your quest. Who are we serving? Have we really identified that niche? Because we can't be everything to everybody. What do we do to make our why real? What contributions of value are we adding? How are we working together in our culture to make things work? And what's our ultimate destination and direction? So to put that to the focus, to the model of the escalator effect, the beginning and the end are focus. Why are we here and where are we going? Who do we serve to build this member experience around? What value we deliver to create relevant distinction? And finally, what is the employee engagement around our values and our culture? As Yogi Berra said, if you don't know where you're going, you might wind up someplace else. You might have flashlights pointing in different directions. And if we don't hold ourselves accountable to execution, as Thomas Edison said, vision without execution is just hallucination. So the future is right around the corner. In fact, arguably, it's right here now. We encourage you to use some of the tools and techniques I've shared with you to escalate your future, embrace the escalator effect and the escalator model, and find greater success as a result. It's been said, if you can learn one thing from a program like this, your time has been of value. I encourage you to think about your top takeaways from this program and what you can use to be more productive back in your role at your organization. I'm Neil Goldman. It has been my privilege to be with you for this hour we've taken together. Thank you for being with me, and I wish you great success and escalations in your efforts. Thank you very much.